I thought I was escaping the city's noise when I pulled up the gravel driveway to my in-laws' eco lodge in rural Oregon. Towering cedars formed a natural arch over the entrance. The air smelled of damp earth and wild mint. At the front porch, my mother-in-law Linda greeted me with a warm smile and a mason jar of bright green juice. "A special recipe, just for you," she said, her fingers trembling ever so slightly as she handed me the glass. I thanked her, raised the jar to my lips, then paused. My photographer's eye caught it, a faint, oily film dancing on the surface, catching the morning light like an afterthought. I set the juice down, masking my unease with a polite nod. Inside the lodge was a showcase of perfection, hand-woven rugs, precise stone pathways, and windows that framed the forest like living paintings. My father-in-law, Dr. Walker, stood by a statement about mindful living, arms folded, studying me with quiet curiosity. We sat for brunch beneath the skylight. Anna, my wife, squeezed my hand under the table. She had no idea what I'd seen, or perhaps she did, but she trusted her parents. Linda fussed over her daughter's plate while Dr. Walker quizzed me on my latest project budget, as if it were a dietary breakdown. When I smiled and said everything was fine, his eyes lingered on me, measuring my composure. 45 minutes later, I was halfway through my second bite of organic granola when a wave of dizziness hit. My vision blurred, my head pounded, and a tight knot of panic formed in my chest. Across the table, Dr. Walker doubled over, clutching his abdomen. Linda's lips parted in alarm, but her panic felt rehearsed, a shadow play of concern. "Food poisoning," she murmured. "It must be something you ate in the car." I reached for a water glass, quietly pocketing the untouched green juice. Inside me, shock gave way to a chilled focus. I would not collapse here, not without answers. I finished my water, forced a calm smile as Anna rushed to her father's side and resolved to uncover the truth. In this series, you'll follow each step I took: the late-night phone call to a trusted toxicology lab, the discreet audit of Linda's prescription history, the hours spent reviewing security camera stills, and finally the confrontation that flipped their world upside down. You'll learn how precision and patience, rather than anger, became my greatest weapons. So breathe deep, adjust your headphones, and imagine that first sip. Sunlight on the glass, the forest breathing around you, and the taste of betrayal just beneath the surface. This is where the real story begins. My name is Marcus Hayes, and I'm a 35-year-old documentary filmmaker based in Portland, Oregon. For more than a decade, my camera has been my passport into wildfire-ravaged towns in California, into hidden artisan cheese workshops in Vermont, and even onto the decks of New England fishing boats at dawn. Each project taught me to trust my instincts, to find truth in the silent moments. But here, at my in-laws' eco lodge, those instincts felt like both gift and curse. You see, my work, freelance, unpredictable, sometimes months between paychecks, never earned their respect. Dr. Walker, a tenured environmental science professor, measured success in peer-reviewed articles and secure pension plans. Linda, his wife, arranged social fundraisers and judged everyone by the size of their donation, not by the stories they told. My wife Anna and I met 6 years ago at a Seattle film festival. I just wrapped a short on the resilience of flood survivors. She was presenting her thesis on sustainable agriculture. We clicked instantly, both of us chasing purpose over profit. Our first date was editing footage on my laptop in a 24-hour cafe, her explaining compost ratios while I adjusted color grading. We built a life of sunrise shoots and midnight edits, of cheap coffee and big dreams. Every holiday dinner was a subtle audition. At Christmas brunch, Dr. Walker would quiz me on my tax write-offs. At Easter lunch, Linda praised Anna's practical greenhouse project, then eyed me over the casserole with thinly veiled skepticism. They'd pat me on the shoulder. "We're proud of you, dear." But their eyes said, When will you grow up? 2 years ago, my wildfire documentary aired on national news. I received a modest grant from the Documentary Guild, and even a few congratulatory emails from strangers whose lives I touched. I showed the clips to Dr. Walker. He nodded politely, then turned the conversation to Anna's latest soil test results. That moment stung. He celebrated scientific data over human stories. So when Anna told me about the retreat, "It's just a weekend, Marcus. It'll be good," I agreed, bracing myself. I strapped my camera on, checked my gear twice, and rehearsed polite smiles in the car mirror. Deep down, I knew this wasn't about family bonding. It was their final exam for me. Could I prove worth beyond the lens? As I stepped into the lodge's misty courtyard, I felt that familiar spark of determination. Whatever tests they'd laid out, perfect raspberries, yoga critiques, wellness drinks, I was ready. My story wouldn't be judged by balance sheets or lab coats, but by the strength of my evidence and the integrity of my resolve. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the arrival itself and those first subtle red flags. The raspberries, the water condensation, the staccato yoga corrections, small details that foretold the poison to come. But now you know who I am and what's at stake. My career, my marriage, and the truth I refuse to let be silenced. We arrived just as dawn broke, the lodge emerging from the mist like a guardian of the forest. The gravel driveway crunched under my tires. I stepped out, inhaled the cool air, pine, damp earth, and something faintly sweet. Linda stood on the porch, hands on her hips, dressed impeccably in earth tones. She greeted me with that practiced smile, then handed me a mason jar of kale apple juice. Her fingers brushed mine, just a whisper of contact, but I felt a subtle tremor. "Good morning, Marcus," she said softly. "Try this new blend I perfected overnight." Inside, the main hall was a display of curated calm. Hand-woven rugs, polished cedar floors, and large windows framing towering firs. Dr. Walker hovered by a shelf lined with neatly stacked visitor logs and bound journals labeled guest notes. His nod was almost imperceptible, but it set me on edge. Over a breakfast of steel-cut oats and farm-fresh berries, the first oddity caught my eye. 6 raspberries arranged in a perfect hexagon atop my bowl, too deliberate to be accidental. Anna laughed when I pointed it out, but I noticed her quick look at Linda, whose smile never wavered. Later, we joined Dr. Walker's sunrise yoga session on a cedar deck. He guided us through sun salutations with measured grace, then paused to correct my Warrior II alignment. His touch on my shoulder was firm, far too firm for a simple adjustment. "Alignment is everything," he murmured in his calm professor voice. His eyes locked on mine, evaluating. During a mid-morning forest walk, I filled my camera's viewfinder frame by frame. The way sunlight pierced the canopy, a spiderweb glinting with dew, and the visitor logbook left slightly ajar. I caught Linda's reflection in the glass, a shadow of worry flickering across her composed face. Back at the dining table, my water glass appeared overfilled, almost to the brim, while Anna's sat at the usual half-full mark. When I lifted mine, I saw a faint, oily smear inside the rim, invisible at first glance. My photographer's instinct screamed red flag, but I kept my expression neutral. As the sun climbed higher, every detail felt rehearsed. The temperature of the soup, the exact angle of the serving bowls, the timing of the ambient chimes from a hidden speaker. It wasn't hospitality, it was an orchestrated test. By lunch, I'd cataloged enough to know I was in hostile territory. That cocktail of perfection, from raspberries to yoga critiques, was the calm before the storm. I twirled my spoon, masking my impatience, and resolved to stay alert. My camera bag felt heavier, laden not just with lenses, but with unspoken questions. In the next chapter, we'll relive the moment Linda poured that green juice, the single sip that nearly cost me everything. But these first red flags, the raspberries, the fixation on alignment, the oily smear, were my warning signals. Pay attention to the small details. They often reveal the biggest betrayals. Imagine sunlight pouring through a high skylight, illuminating rows of mason jars filled with vibrant green juice. The tablecloth is crisp, linen folds precise. My mother-in-law Linda lifts the pitcher, her wrist flexes deliberately, and she tilts just enough to let a translucent capsule slip beneath the foam. There's no audio cue, only the soft glug of juice settling into the glass. You'd never know anything was wrong until you notice the slightest ripple on the surface, like a pebble dropped in still water. She tucks the small vial back into her apron pocket without breaking eye contact. Her smile never falters. Across the table, Dr. Walker opens the blinds ever so slightly, letting a shaft of light land on my green juice first. I raise my camera to capture the moment, framing the condensation beads on the glass, the shimmer of that capsule just under the surface. My heart pounding like a shutter click. I could stand, shout, call it out, but I don't. Instead, I take a slow breath, set the camera down, and reach for my own water glass. Anna's voice drifts from the kitchen corner. Are you excited for this afternoon's forest tour? I nod, masking the gravity of what I've seen. My next move is entirely instinct. I pick up both glasses, smiling politely, and carry them together to her husband, placing the tainted one in front of him. Gerald glances up from his phone, confusion and trust intertwined on his face. He downs it in 3 steady sips, no hesitation. I, meanwhile, swap to my water and lift the untouched green juice to my nose, letting its fresh kale apple scent fill my senses. There's a beat of silence, then the world tilts. My vision narrows, the edges of the room soften. Dr. Walker stands, face ashen, his hand pressed against his stomach. Linda gasps, but her panic feels performative, as if she's practiced it in front of a mirror. I slide into my chair carefully, head spinning, but refuse to vomit. My photographer's discipline kicks in. Document, don't react. My hand trembles just enough to capture a close-up on my phone. Blurry footage of his collapse and her frantic expression. 45 minutes of disorientation follow. Mine filled with calculated calm, his with violent pain. In that stretch, I decide, I will not be a victim. Every second of dizziness, every blurred heartbeat, turns into resolve. That sip of poison becomes proof I will wield, proof to expose their plan, piece by piece. In the next chapter, we'll trace my immediate steps. The clandestine lab test, the discreet clinic visit, and the first confirming phone call that turned suspicion into certainty. But remember this moment. The sip you never saw, the capsule you never heard, because that's where the true story began. 45 minutes after that fateful sip, Dr. Walker was slumped in his chair, face pale as winter fog, sweat beading on his forehead. He gasped for breath, clutching the table's edge. Linda's well-practiced concern snapped into a panicked dance. Yet I noticed her eyes flicker to me, calculating. I sat motionless, finishing the glass of water I'd swapped, then quietly slid my untouched green juice into my satchel pocket. No shriek, no scene, just measured calm. My heart hammered, but my face stayed serene. Around me, Anna knelt beside her father, whispering reassurances. No one suspected I held the key to this betrayal in my coat. As the household spiraled in confusion, I counted primal responses. Linda's perfectly manicured nails tapping the table, the way Gerald's breaths came shallow and rapid. I noted every detail with the clarity of a lens focus, each micro-expression a clue. By the time they wheeled Dr. Walker to the guest room, my resolve had crystallized. I would not be silenced or sidelined. While Anna followed to the bedroom, I slipped outside to the cedar deck. The sky was overcast, branches swayed in the breeze, and somewhere a stream gurgled in its bed. I closed my eyes, inhaled the cool, damp air, and let adrenaline sharpen my mind. This was no longer shock, it was strategy. I pulled out my phone and tapped a secure contact. Jason, urgent, toxicology report needed. A single line. Got the glass. Send it now. No further words. Then I texted Linda under the guise of thanking her for the wonderful juice. It kept suspicion low. Back inside, I watched the perfect serenity of the lodge unravel. My camera bag felt lighter than before, as if by simply pocketing that poisoned glass, I'd reclaimed power. I walked over to Anna, put a hand on her shoulder, and murmured, "I need some air. I'll be back in 10." She nodded, worry in her eyes, but trusted my calm. In the next segment, you'll see how I transformed suspicion into proof. The clandestine blood test, the discreet prescription audit, and that late-night meeting with a family law attorney. But remember this moment, the quiet calm after the storm, the decision to fight with evidence rather than emotion. That's where the real counterattack began. Over the next 2 days, I became part detective, part filmmaker, relentless in pursuit of the truth. Every step was precise, every call discreet. 1. Toxicology lab test. I met Jason at his private lab under the pretense of reviewing old footage. In a sealed container, I handed him the green juice glass. Within hours, he texted me, "Benzodiazepines confirmed. Mild sedative, non-lethal, enough to knock someone out for hours. Send address for full report." That confirmation turned suspicion into certainty. 2. Prescription audit. Posing as a concerned neighbor, I requested Linda's medication history from 2 local pharmacies. The records showed triple-dose Xanax refills over the past month, far beyond therapeutic levels. It was clear she'd been stockpiling sedatives. 3rd, security camera footage. I contacted a former lodge handyman and secured time-stamped clips from the kitchen door camera. There, on 2 separate mornings, Linda entered clutching a small vial, lingered by the juice station, and slipped away moments before guests arrived. 4th, neighbor interviews. I visited the nearby cabin of an elderly couple who'd attended the retreat last year. They recalled Linda lurking late at night, as if hiding something, and reported missing heirloom jewelry they'd assumed was stolen. Their anecdotes painted a pattern of covert behavior. 5. Anonymous tip. A surprising email arrived from an unknown address. 2 stills from an interior camera showing Linda's trembling hand over a glass and Gerald collapsing moments later. Whoever sent it signed off. Don't let them rewrite your story. Piece by piece, lab reports, prescription logs, camera stills, eyewitness accounts, I assembled an airtight case. Each element was a puzzle fragment, and together they formed an unbreakable picture of premeditated betrayal. In the next chapter, we'll see how I leveraged that evidence in a strategic confrontation that left them with no choice but to listen. But remember, solid proof wins where anger fails. By the 3rd morning, I knew direct confrontation would blow the whole operation. Instead, I fortified my world, quietly, methodically, like setting up a fortress. 1. Financial lockdown. I sat at my laptop in the cedar-paneled den and changed every shared password. Our joint bank account, credit cards, investment apps. 2-factor authentication went live everywhere. Emails, even the streaming service. If they tried to siphon funds or freeze my accounts, they'd trigger alerts straight to my phone. 2. Encrypted backups. My film archives, years of footage, were my livelihood. I backed up every raw clip to 2 encrypted drives stashed in separate locations, one at Anna's family cabin, the other with a trusted colleague in Seattle. No surprise wipe or blackmail could erase my work. 3. Digital surveillance alerts. I engaged a cybersecurity friend to monitor any odd logins on my social media and email. Every failed password attempt, every unusual IP address, I'd get a real-time ping. Their digital footsteps would no longer be silent. 4. Legal preparedness. Under the guise of drafting a family documentary contract, I met privately with a family law attorney. We drafted a cease and desist letter and outlined steps for a protective injunction. If Linda and Dr. Walker crossed any line, I'd have instant legal leverage. 5. Physical security measures. That afternoon, I installed 2 compact door sensor cameras at our home's entry points. Smoke detector style, cloud linked, and password protected. Should anyone show up unannounced, I'd have clear footage and timestamps. 6th, communication strategy. I crafted neutral, deflective replies to any family invitation. Thanks, but I need to focus on editing this footage. No anger, no accusation, just polite distance. Every message was archived as evidence of my consistent boundaries. 7. Emotional armor. Finally, I fortified my own mind. Morning jogs in the forest, a daily journal to record every interaction, and nightly meditation to keep panic at bay. Mental resilience would be my shield against their emotional warfare. By the end of that week, I wasn't just the potential victim of poisoning, I was the one holding all the cards. They could manipulate my drink, but they couldn't touch my evidence, my finances, or my peace of mind. In the next chapter, you'll witness how I turned that preparation into a decisive confrontation they never saw coming. When Linda casually asked, Marcus, would you film our orchard tour tomorrow? I sensed my opening. The orchard barn, sunlit, rustic, with rows of apple crates, would be the perfect stage. The next morning, I arrived alone. My camera rigged to record both wide-angle video and directional audio. In one hand, I carried a sealed envelope labeled Private Documents for Mrs. Walker. My heart thumped, but my face was calm. Linda met me at the barn door bright-eyed. Thanks for doing this, she said, adjusting her scarf. I nodded, then slipped the envelope onto the wooden table alongside the lens case. She looked puzzled but curious. Before we start, I began softly, raising my camera to record the moment. There's something you need to see. I placed a still from the security footage on the table. Linda's own hand, exactly as it poured the capsule. Her composure flickered. I opened the envelope. Inside were the toxicology report, prescription logs, and those late-night security clips. I laid them out one by one, narrating each fact. This report confirms benzodiazepines in your green juice. These prescriptions show you refilled 3 times the therapeutic dose last month. And here's the footage. You entering the kitchen with a vial, away from guests. Linda's hand trembled now. Not the practiced tremor, but genuine shock. Dr. Walker stepped in from the doorway, brow furrowed. He reached for the lab report, scanning the lines. I spoke calmly, deliberately. I'm giving you a choice. Respect our boundaries. No more surprises, no more tests, or I make all of this public. Your country club, your colleagues, the board at the university, they will see every detail. Silence pressed in. The only sound was my camera's faint hum and a lone bird calling outside. Linda swallowed hard. Dr. Walker's shoulders slumped. We never intended to harm you, Linda whispered. But her words felt empty. I stood, packed my gear, and said, intention aside, the facts remain. I expect written confirmation by tomorrow. You two will respect our rules. Otherwise, I'll share this evidence far and wide. I walked out into the orchard sunlight, camera still rolling. Behind me, I heard Linda's voice, half apology, half plea, and Dr. Walker's quiet murmur, we can work this out. But I didn't look back. In that moment, I realized true power lies not in anger, but in undeniable proof. Their facade cracked, and for the first time, they faced consequences on my terms. In the next chapter, we'll explore the fallout, how they reacted, how we enforced new boundaries, and how I transformed that confrontation into real change. But remember this, a calm challenge backed by rock-solid evidence can topple even the most practiced deceptions. After that barn confrontation, I expected firestorms of denial. Instead, a curious calm set in. That afternoon, Anna and I met in our living room. Her eyes red from crying, mine steady. They apologized, she whispered, voice trembling. But I knew words alone wouldn't rebuild trust. So we laid down new rules together. No unannounced visits. Any family event must be scheduled at least 72 hours in advance. Video call protocol, weekly check-ins only on our terms. No surprise pop-ins. Couples therapy. We booked sessions with a trauma-informed counselor to unpack the betrayal and restore our bond. That evening, I drafted an email to Linda and Dr. Walker, a concise summary of our new boundaries, citing the evidence I'd shared. No threats, only clarity. We value family, I wrote, but our well-being is non-negotiable. Over the next week, I published an anonymized blog post titled When Loved Ones Turn Predator, detailing my experience without naming names. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments from people who'd felt controlled or tested by family. It turned private betrayal into a public conversation. Meanwhile, Anna and I doubled down on self-care. Morning hikes through old-growth forest, nightly meditation by our creek, and shared journaling exercises. Those rituals, once luxuries, became lifelines. 2 weeks later, I received a measured reply from Dr. Walker. Understood. We will respect your wishes. No admission of guilt, but compliance nonetheless. That's all we needed. In the next chapter, I'll share the final step, how I transformed this ordeal into advocacy, launching a support network for creatives facing covert manipulation. But first, remember, setting clear boundaries and seeking healing isn't weakness, it's survival. Here we are at the end of my journey, yet really it's just the beginning for you. I turned betrayal into blueprint, poison into proof, and fear into fortitude. Now it's your turn. Document one suspicious moment today. Write it down, record it, freeze it in time. Share it with a trusted ally, a friend, a counselor, a lawyer, someone who can help you verify and protect. Establish 2 new personal boundaries. No more surprise visits, no more unvetted help. Whatever feels essential to your peace. Join the Creative Shield Network at creativeshield.org for free legal templates, peer mentors, and monthly webinars on boundary setting and digital hygiene. Remember, your life, your choices, your narrative, no one else owns them. When silence feels safer than conflict, that's your cue to speak up. When calm seems easier than confrontation, that's your moment to gather proof. Thank you for listening. If you've ever been tested by those who claim to love you, leave a comment below. Your story can light the way for someone else. Subscribe for more hard-won insights and take control of your narrative before anyone else tries to write it for you.